I always thought my father left me nothing, not his land, not his love, not even a goodbye. But a week after his funeral, I tore down a wall in our old farmhouse, and what I found changed everything. A hidden will, a buried truth, and a family secret that nearly destroyed us all. This is the story of how I uncovered the will my father never meant for anyone, except me. Before we continue, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more stories like this. The church was nearly empty. Only a handful of people sat scattered across the wooden pews. Rain tapped softly against the stained glass windows as if the heavens were mourning for a man no one else would. Rachel Donovan stood at the back, dressed in a plain black dress and holding a damp umbrella. Her face was blank, but her heart was loud, beating with memories she had tried to forget. Up front, her father's casket lay closed. No flowers. No photos. Just a dark wooden box in a room full of silence. Nathan, her older brother, sat beside their stepmother Diana in the front row. He hadn't looked back once. Diana wore black too, but with red lipstick and heels that clicked loudly as she entered. She held Nathan's arm like a prize. Rachel didn't move until the pastor cleared his throat and began the short eulogy. Thomas Donovan was a man of the land. A man of few words. A farmer. A father. Rachel barely heard the rest. Her eyes were on the coffin. She hadn't seen her father in 7 years. Their last words had been cold, distant. She could still remember his voice from that night. If you leave, don't bother coming back. And she hadn't, until now. After the service, as people slowly filed out, Nathan finally turned around. Well, look who decided to show up, he said, walking up to her. Thought you were too good for the rest of us. Rachel didn't flinch. I came to pay my respects. Nathan snorted. Respect? You walked out on him. Don't pretend you care now. I didn't walk out, Rachel said, trying to keep her voice calm. I had to leave. Diana stepped in before Nathan could respond. You always had an excuse, Rachel. Always the victim. Rachel stared at her, then looked at the graveyard outside. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hovered like a threat. I'm staying at the old house, she said quietly. I want to go through Dad's things. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Why? Everything's going to me anyway. The will's been settled. I'm not after anything, Rachel replied. It was my home too. Diana scoffed. Well, don't make a mess while you're playing memory games. As they walked away, Rachel stood alone in the churchyard, staring at her father's name carved in the stone. Thomas Elijah Donovan, 1948 to 2025. A quiet man who loved his land. She whispered under her breath, Did you ever really love us? Later that evening, Rachel arrived at the old Donovan farmhouse. The roof sagged in places, and weeds had taken over the front porch. But it still smelled like home, wood smoke, dust, and something old and earthy. Inside, the furniture was covered with white sheets. A few family pictures still hung on the walls, faded and crooked. She walked into the living room, her footsteps creaking on the wooden floorboards. She paused by her father's old rocking chair. It sat by the fireplace, still facing the window that overlooked the fields. The wind blew gently outside, rattling the windows. Then, Rachel heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She froze. It came from inside the wall, behind the fireplace. Rachel slowly stepped closer, pressing her ear to the wall. Scratch, scratch, silence. Probably mice, she thought. Or maybe something else. She shook her head, suddenly tired. It was a long day. Her father was gone. The house felt like a ghost. She pulled a blanket from the closet and curled up on the old couch, listening to the wind outside, and wondering if the house was trying to tell her something. The next morning, Rachel woke up to the smell of old wood and dust. Sunlight streamed through the torn curtains, lighting up particles in the air like floating memories. She stretched, yawned, and walked into the kitchen. The faucet groaned, then sputtered out cold water. She rinsed her face and looked at herself in the cracked mirror above the sink. Same green eyes as her father. Same quiet face. After a quick breakfast of instant coffee and dry toast, Rachel started cleaning. She pulled the sheets off the furniture, swept the floors, and opened the windows to let in fresh air. The house groaned in return, as if waking up after a long sleep. In the hallway, she passed by the air vent near her old bedroom. It looked slightly loose. She paused. Something about it caught her attention. She crouched down and tugged gently. The vent cover came off with a small clang. Inside, covered in dust, was a folded envelope. Her heart skipped. She pulled it out and saw her name written in bold handwriting. Rachel. Nothing else. Just her name. Hands shaking, she opened it. Inside was a letter, yellowed with age. Dear Rachel. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And I hope you came back not because of money, but because you needed to understand. This house holds more than memories. It holds truths I couldn't say aloud. You always listen more with your heart than your ears, so maybe you'll understand why I hid what I did. If you truly want to know who deserves the land, look where the wind never touched. Dad! Rachel stared at the paper, her fingers trembling. Where the wind never touched, she whispered. What did that mean? The basement? The attic? Behind the walls? She folded the letter carefully and put it in her pocket. That afternoon, she drove into town to pick up some tools and supplies. At the hardware store, she ran into Eli Matthews. He was taller now, broader, his sleeves rolled up, hands dusty from work. His beard was neatly trimmed, and his eyes still carried the same soft kindness she remembered. Rachel, he asked, surprised. Hey, Eli, she said with a small smile. Wow. It's been, what? 10 years. Feels longer, she said. You look good. He grinned. You too. Sorry about your dad. Thanks. They stood in silence for a moment before he asked, You staying long? I don't know yet. I'm cleaning up the old house. Oh yeah. Eli tilted his head. You might need help. That place is barely standing. She chuckled. Tell me about it. Tell you what, he offered. I've got some time this week. I can come by, help you look around. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. Back at the farmhouse, Rachel returned to the vent. She looked deeper inside but found nothing else. Later, as she and Eli walked through the rooms together, he asked, What are you really looking for? She handed him the letter. He read it slowly. Heh. Where the wind never touched. That's poetic. I don't think it's just poetic, she said. I think he meant something real. A place in the house. A secret. Eli nodded. Well, old houses like this, people hide things. You'd be surprised what ends up behind walls or under floors. They moved furniture, tapped on panels, and examined corners. Then Eli paused by the fireplace. Did you hear this last night? He asked. Rachel nodded. Something scratched from inside. He knocked gently on the brick wall. A hollow sound echoed back. This part isn't solid, he said. That's strange. They fetched a small hammer and carefully chipped away at a section of the wall. After about 10 minutes, part of the brick gave way, revealing a hidden cavity behind the fireplace. Inside, dusty but intact, was a metal box. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Eli reached in and pulled it out. It was heavier than it looked. She opened it slowly. Inside, old photographs, a small notebook, and a folded piece of paper tied with string. She untied the string and opened it. Her hands flew to her mouth. It was a will. Handwritten. Notarized. Dated 5 years later than the one Nathan had claimed. Last will and testament of Thomas Elijah Donovan. I, Thomas Donovan, in full mind and body, do hereby leave the following. The house, land, and orchard, to my daughter, Rachel Donovan. The tractor and tools, to Eli Matthews, for his kindness and loyalty. $1, to Nathan Donovan, who made his choices. Nothing, to Diana Donovan, who never truly loved this land or its people. Signed, Thomas Elijah Donovan. Rachel's hands shook. I don't believe this, she whispered. Eli stared at the paper, eyes wide. This changes everything. Rachel felt tears rise, but not from sadness. From shock. From the feeling of being seen. Her father had left her the land. The real will was never read, never known. And now, everything would change. Rachel sat on the floor of the living room, the will still open in her hands. Her father's signature stared back at her like a secret that had waited too long to be seen. The lines were shaky, but clear. The words were honest, cutting and final. She looked at Eli, who sat across from her, holding the notebook they'd found in the metal box. He left me everything, she whispered. Looks like he meant for you to find this, Eli said. But why hide it? Because he knew Nathan and Diana would never let it see the light of day. Rachel's chest felt tight. Her father had chosen her. After all the silence, all the years apart, he'd chosen her. But the other will, she said slowly. The one Nathan showed at the lawyer's office, it's different. He got everything. Eli nodded. Then this one. This is the real one. Dated 5 years later. And notarized. That matters. Rachel carefully folded the will and placed it back in the box. I need to take this to the lawyer, she said. Tomorrow morning. Eli stood and helped her up. I'll go with you. The next day, they entered the small law office in town. The receptionist led them to Mr. Lawson, a silver-haired man with thick glasses and a tired expression. He barely looked up until Rachel placed the metal box on his desk. What's this? He asked. Rachel opened the lid, pulled out the will, and laid it in front of him. His eyes scanned the paper slowly, then again, this time more carefully. Where did you get this? Hidden behind a wall in my father's house, she replied. With photos and a notebook. It's dated after the will Nathan presented. Mr. Lawson leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. I didn't know this existed. The will I read at the funeral was dated 2020. This is from 2025. 5 years later, Rachel said. Is it valid? He sighed. If this signature is verified, and it looks like it will be, then yes. This is the binding will. Rachel felt a weight begin to lift, until the door burst open. Nathan. He strode into the office like he owned it. His eyes flicked to the will, then to Rachel. What is this? Mr. Lawson cleared his throat. Your sister brought in another will. A later one. Nathan snatched it off the desk. His face reddened as he read it. No. This is fake. You expect me to believe this? She shows up after Dad dies and suddenly finds a new will. Rachel stood up. It was hidden in the house. Behind a wall. You think I planted it there? Nathan's voice rose. I think you're desperate. You left. You were gone for years. I stayed. I worked that land. You stole from him, Rachel snapped before she could stop herself. Nathan froze. What did you say? I found the old receipts. Bank slips. You took money from the farm accounts. Dad knew. That's why he changed the will. Nathan stepped forward. His jaw clenched, fists tight. You don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Lawson held up a hand. Enough. If there's a dispute, it goes to court. I'll have this will examined immediately. If it's valid, it overrides the previous one. Nathan turned to Rachel. You have no idea what you've started. I think I do, she said, her voice calm but firm. And I'm not backing down. That night, back at the farmhouse, Rachel sat on the porch with Eli. The sky was streaked with orange and purple. Crickets chirped. The air smelled like grass and old wood. I didn't plan to fight him, she said quietly. I just wanted to know why my father cut me out. You found more than that, Eli replied. You found the truth. Rachel looked out at the field. What if I lose in court? What if they find a way to bury this again? Then we fight harder, he said. But you've already won something, Rachel. You know your father didn't forget you. She nodded slowly. Yeah. And that changes everything. The next morning, Rachel awoke to banging on the front door. She rushed down the stairs and opened it. Maggie stood there, weathered, gray-haired, and holding a brown paper bag. Maggie! Rachel smiled. You came. I heard what you found, Maggie said, stepping inside. And I brought you something. They sat at the kitchen table. Maggie opened the bag and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. This was your father's, she said. He gave it to me years ago and told me to keep it safe until the time was right. Rachel opened it. Page after page, in her father's handwriting, were entries about the farm, the house, and his children. She flipped to one dated just months before his death. December 10th, 2024. I think about Rachel often. I don't blame her for leaving. I blame myself for not making her feel safe here. Diana never liked her, and Nathan, he's become someone I barely recognize. I wish I had told Rachel how proud I was. But I know she felt my silence louder than any words. Maybe one day, she'll come back. And maybe then, she'll understand what this land really meant. I buried the will behind the wall, only she will find it. Because only she will look with a heart open wide enough to see it. Rachel wiped her eyes. He wanted me to know. Maggie nodded. Your father was stubborn, but he wasn't blind. He saw who loved this place, who respected it. Rachel held the journal to her chest. Thank you for keeping this. There's more, Maggie said. You need to check the east bedroom. The one with the cracked plaster near the window. Your father used to say, not all the walls are honest. That afternoon, Rachel and Eli went upstairs to the east bedroom. The room smelled like old curtains and forgotten stories. Sunlight filtered through a broken blind. Rachel touched the cracked plaster near the window. I feel something behind it, she said. Eli nodded. Let's open it. With gentle taps and scrapes, they peeled away the weak plaster. Behind it was a narrow wooden recess, just wide enough to hide something long and flat. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a voice recorder. Rachel looked at Eli, then pressed play. Her father's voice filled the room, older, slower, but clear. If you're hearing this, Rachel, then you found what I hid. I didn't have the strength to fight your brother and Diana while I was alive. But I didn't want them to win. Not in the end. I know I wasn't a good father. I know I didn't say the right things. But I always believed you had more heart than all of us. That land deserves someone who listens to the earth, not someone who wants to sell it. You stayed away, but your heart never left. I know that now. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. But I hope this voice, this will, this truth, gives you the peace I never gave. Rachel clutched the recorder, her face wet with tears. He recorded this for me, she whispered. He wanted me to know. Eli wrapped an arm around her shoulder. Now you do. Later that night, Rachel sat in the living room with the journal, the will, and the recorder in front of her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a visitor in her own home. She felt like a daughter, finally welcomed. Rachel stood in her father's orchard the next morning, holding the recorder in one hand and the old journal in the other. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their branches whispering like old men telling secrets. This was the place her father had poured his life into, the same place she'd once run through barefoot as a child, laughing with grass stains on her knees. She turned to Eli, who had joined her again early that morning. I keep thinking about all the things I didn't say to him, Rachel said, voice quiet. He knew, Eli replied. You didn't have to say them. Rachel smiled faintly. I used to sit under that tree, she pointed to a tall pear tree near the fence line, and read out loud to him while he worked. He never said much, but he'd glance over now and then and smile. Eli nodded. I remember. You had that red book you always carried. Rachel's eyes shimmered. He kept it. It was in the attic, wrapped in a scarf. They sat under the tree, and Rachel opened her father's journal again. Her fingers traced the ink, the loops and crooked lines that told stories even in silence. Entry, March 15, 2023. I saw Nathan again today with that strange man from the city. He doesn't think I notice when he slips away or when funds go missing. He thinks the land is just dirt. He's planning something. Selling pieces behind my back maybe. But Rachel, if she ever comes back, maybe she can bring the soul of this place alive again. I wish I had told her how proud I was when she left, not because she ran, but because she was brave enough to choose peace over pain. I didn't protect her from Diana. I'll live with that until I die. Rachel blinked fast. He knew, she whispered. He knew Diana was cruel. Eli looked at her. What did she do, Rachel? Rachel hesitated. The words felt heavy. She used to lock me out of the kitchen. She'd throw away my letters before Dad ever saw them. One time, when I was 16, she told him I'd skipped school to meet boys in town. I hadn't. But he believed her. He slapped me. I never forgot it. Eli's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. I had no idea. I left because I didn't feel like I mattered. I thought Dad didn't care. Rachel's voice broke. But now I know he just didn't know how to fight for me. Eli placed a hand on hers. You were never the problem. They were. Later that day, Rachel walked into town alone to buy some groceries. As she stepped out of the store, she ran into Diana, dressed in a fitted black dress, heels clicking against the pavement. Well, if it isn't the long-lost daughter, Diana said coolly. Rachel held her ground. You knew about the second will, didn't you? Diana's eyes narrowed. What second will? You always looked at me like I didn't belong here. Like I was some stain on your perfect little family. I treated you just fine. You treated me like I was nothing. Like a ghost in my own house. Diana's smile was cold. Thomas never loved you the way you think he did. Rachel took a step closer. He loved this land. And he left it to me. That must burn. For the first time, Diana's face cracked, just a flicker. She walked away without another word, her heels echoing against the street. Rachel stood still for a long time, the bag of groceries forgotten in her hand. The past was roaring back, louder than ever, but so was the truth. It was nearly dark when Rachel returned to the farmhouse. As she stepped into the kitchen, she saw something strange. A drawer was open. Papers were scattered across the counter. Her heart skipped. Eli, she called out. No answer. She dropped the groceries and rushed upstairs. The door to her father's study was wide open. Someone had been there. Suddenly, behind her, footsteps. She turned fast. Nathan stood in the hallway, red-faced, breathing hard. You had no right, he said. Rachel stepped back. How did you get in? The spare keys still under the porch. You never were smart about hiding things. I called the lawyer. The will's being reviewed. It's real, Nathan. I stayed. I worked this farm. I took care of him when you ran off. You stole from him, Rachel replied firmly. You betrayed him. Nathan's eyes flared. He never loved me the way he loved you. Rachel blinked. What? You were always his favorite, Nathan hissed. Even when you left. Even when you stopped writing. He kept your photos in his drawer. He never threw away anything you gave him. Me. I was just the help. Rachel was silent. She had never imagined Nathan felt that way. "You think you deserve this land," he said, stepping closer. "You think you earned it." "I didn't earn it," she said quietly. "But I didn't take it for granted." Nathan's hands balled into fists. "I swear," he growled, "I'll burn this place down before I let you have it." Suddenly, Eli appeared at the top of the stairs. "I'd think twice about saying that out loud," he said. Nathan turned, startled. "You stay out of this." "I'm already in it," Eli said. "And you need to leave. Now." Nathan glared at them both, chest heaving. "This isn't over," he spat, and then stormed down the stairs and out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Rachel sank onto the top step, shaking. Eli sat beside her. "You okay?" "I'm scared," she whispered. He meant it. He could really hurt someone. He's angry. And desperate. But we're not going to let him scare you. She looked up at him. "I don't want this to turn ugly." Eli placed a gentle hand over hers. "Rachel, it already has. But now we do what your father wanted. We protect what matters." That night, Rachel lay in bed, unable to sleep. She listened to the house breathing, its creaks, its groans, the wind whispering outside. Her father had hidden the will behind the wall, not because he didn't trust the world, but because he didn't trust the people closest to him. Nathan had grown bitter. Diana had grown cruel. And Thomas, he had grown afraid. But he had also found courage. In those final years, he had chosen love. He had chosen Rachel. She reached for the voice recorder beside her bed and played it again, just to hear his voice. Only she will look with a heart open wide enough to see it. Rachel closed her eyes and let the words wash over her. The morning was still and cold. Mist rolled across the fields, curling between the trees like fingers searching for something lost. Rachel stood in the attic, the recorder still warm in her hand. Eli was beside her, holding a flashlight. The wooden floor beneath them creaked with every movement, but Rachel felt something else beneath her feet, an odd hollow sound when she stepped near her father's old rocking chair. She crouched down and tapped gently. Thump, thump, hollow. "Here," she said. "This is it." Eli knelt beside her, running his hand over the wood. "This section's been nailed down differently." With care, they used a crowbar to lift the floorboard. Dust rose into the air. Beneath it was a small rusted metal box with a lock. Rachel's heart pounded. Eli tried the latch. It snapped open easily. Inside, a single envelope marked for Rachel, a folded legal document, and a small tape recorder with one final cassette. Rachel opened the letter first. Her father's handwriting looked more unsteady than the last time. "My Rachel, if you found this, then I know you didn't give up. You were always the one who saw what others ignored. This is the signed will. The real one. I didn't trust Nathan or Diana, not after what I found out. I know they'll fight you. But don't let them win. I recorded my confession on tape. If they call me a liar when I'm gone, let them hear my voice. I hope one day you find peace here. Love. Dad." Rachel held the letter to her chest. Then Eli helped insert the cassette into the tape recorder. Her father's voice crackled into the attic. "My name is Thomas Donovan. I'm of sound mind. If you're hearing this, it means I've passed on. And this is my truth. Years ago, I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong people, my son, my second wife. I signed a will under pressure, thinking it was the only way to keep peace. But peace bought with lies never lasts. My daughter, Rachel, deserved better. She never took from me. She never raised her voice, never demanded anything. She walked away to protect her own heart, and I failed her by letting her go. This is me, undoing the wrongs I allowed. The land, the house, the orchard, everything goes to Rachel. Not because she asked for it, but because she earned it with the quiet way she loved me, even in silence." The tape ended with a click. Rachel wiped her face. She didn't even realize she had started crying. Eli put a hand on her back. This will hold up in court. I know, she whispered. But I don't want to destroy Nathan. I just want what's fair. You're not destroying him, Eli said gently. He did that to himself. That afternoon, Rachel and her lawyer, Mr. Lawson, presented the signed will and the audio recording to the court registrar. Nathan didn't show up that day, but Diana did. She stood in the back of the room in a dark coat and sunglasses. As the clerk played the tape aloud for verification, Diana's face turned pale. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. But her jaw was tight, and her hands were clenched in her coat pockets. When it ended, Rachel turned to look at her. For a moment, the two women just stared at each other, no words. Just years of unspoken hurt between them. Then Diana left the building without saying a single thing. That evening, Eli and Rachel sat on the porch again. They're going to challenge it, Rachel said softly. I know they will. Even if they know they've lost. Then we stand our ground, Eli said. You're not alone in this anymore. Rachel looked out at the darkening sky. She could see the orchard from here, branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. She whispered, "Thank you, Dad." The following week, the town was buzzing. People who had once ignored Rachel at the funeral were now whispering about her everywhere she went. At the diner. "Did you hear? Thomas left everything to the girl who ran away." At the grocery store. "Nathan's furious. I heard he punched a hole in the wall." And at the hardware store. "They say there's a tape." Thomas himself, speaking from beyond. Rachel tried to ignore the noise. But inside, she knew things were far from over. Sure enough, the legal letter came 2 days later. Nathan had filed a formal challenge against the will, claiming forgery and undue influence. Rachel stood in Mr. Lawson's office, the letter shaking in her hands. "He really thinks he can win." Mr. Lawson sighed. People like Nathan don't believe they've lost until the ground gives out beneath them. Rachel's stomach tightened. "What happens now?" "We go to court," he said. "But we have everything we need, documents, dates, even your father's voice. It's strong." That night, Rachel returned to the farmhouse and found the front door open. Her heart jumped. "Eli," she called out. No answer. She stepped inside carefully. The lights were off. The air felt too still. Then she saw it, papers scattered across the floor. The voice recorder smashed to pieces. Her father's journal ripped in two. And standing in the living room was Nathan. His eyes were bloodshot. His face red. His hands shaking. "You think you've won," he said. "You think you get to rewrite everything." Rachel froze. "What are you doing here?" "You took everything," he shouted. "You weren't here. You didn't suffer through the silence. I did." "You made your choices," Rachel said, voice calm but firm. "And now you have to live with them." Nathan grabbed a lamp and hurled it across the room. It shattered. "Stop talking like you're better than me." Eli appeared behind him. "That's enough." Nathan spun around. "Stay out of this." "No," Eli said, stepping between them. "This ends now." Nathan lunged. Eli dodged and shoved him backward. Nathan stumbled, tripped over the broken lamp, and hit the ground hard. Rachel rushed to the phone. Within minutes, the police arrived. They arrested Nathan for breaking and entering and assault. He didn't fight them. He just sat there, breathing hard, staring at nothing. As they led him out in handcuffs, Rachel stood in the doorway. He didn't look at her. The next day, Mr. Lawson called. Nathan's dropped the case. He's agreed to walk away quietly, on one condition. "What condition?" Rachel asked. "He wants to keep the tractor and a few personal items. And he asked that no charges be pressed." Rachel paused for a long time. "Fine," she said. Let him go. 2 days later, Diana packed up and left town. No goodbyes. No messages. Just silence. The farmhouse, once heavy with tension, finally felt still. Peaceful. Rachel walked through the house alone. Through the hallways, the rooms, the quiet corners that once echoed with footsteps and pain. In the living room, she picked up the broken recorder and set it gently in a box of memories. In the orchard, she found a wooden plaque half buried beneath the weeds. She wiped off the dirt. Carved into it. For Rachel. My roots, even from afar. Her knees gave out. She sat in the soil, clutching the sign. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they weren't just from sadness. They were from relief, from closure, from the feeling of being seen, even after death. Later that night, Eli joined her under the stars. She handed him the old, dirt-covered plaque. He planted this, she whispered. For me. Eli smiled. Then it's time you make something of this land. I think I will, she said softly. Not just for me, but for him. They sat in silence, under a sky full of stars, as the orchard whispered around them. Weeks passed. The dust from the legal battle had settled, and Rachel was finally alone with the land her father had left her. She stood at the edge of the orchard, eyes tracing the rows of trees. The pears were beginning to ripen, and the grass had grown tall between the rows. Everything looked tired, but still alive, still holding on. She knelt by the base of one tree, her fingers touching the soft dirt. I never even touched this land growing up, she said quietly to Eli, who stood beside her with a shovel. I wasn't allowed to. Diana used to say it wasn't for me. Well, it is now, Eli said. Every inch of it. Rachel smiled, though her eyes were misty. I want to plant something new. Something that says this place is mine now. Eli handed her the shovel. Then let's start here. Together, they dug a small hole beneath the pear tree where the wooden plaque had been found. Rachel took the plaque, kissed the edge of it, and placed it back into the earth. Then she reached into a small bag she brought from the house. Inside it was her father's old pocket watch, the one he had left her in the first will. She gently lowered it into the hole beside the plaque. I want this buried here, she whispered. So time can rest. So we can both move on. They filled the hole together. Rachel patted the soil and sat back, dirt on her jeans, her hands, her heart. That afternoon, Rachel walked through the house with a notebook in hand. She scribbled down her vision. A community garden. A youth center in the barn. A place where kids could come to learn how to grow their own food. A space to heal. The house would be fixed. The orchard would bloom again. And the land that was once the center of a family war would become a place of peace. Later, she called a small town meeting in the local church hall. Just a dozen people came. Curious neighbors, old friends, and a few quiet strangers. Rachel stood at the front, nervously clearing her throat. I know some of you think I came back just to take the land, she began. But I didn't. I came back to understand why I never felt at home here. And in the end, my father showed me that I always belonged here, I just didn't know it yet. She paused, eyes scanning the small crowd. I want to open the land. Not just for me, but for everyone. A garden for the kids. A space for families. A farm that feeds more than mouths, it feeds memories. A few people clapped. One older woman in the back wiped a tear. Eli watched from the corner, pride glowing in his eyes. When the meeting ended, a man approached her, Mr. Jennings, who once worked with her father decades ago. You got your father's heart, you know, he said gruffly. Thomas didn't always know how to say it, but he was proud of you. Rachel nodded, tears threatening again. Thank you. That means everything. Back at the house, Rachel found herself in her father's old room. She sat on the bed, looking at his things still untouched, the worn Bible, the boots by the wall, the photograph of her mother he'd never taken down. She held the photo in her hand. Mom, she whispered, I hope you know he finally saw me. She placed the picture on the windowsill where the light could touch it. Outside, the sun was beginning to set over the trees. A new kind of warmth filled the house. 6 months later, the Donovan farm had changed. The once abandoned barn now stood tall with fresh red paint and a new roof. Kids came every Saturday to help tend the garden rows. Fresh vegetables grew in neat lines. There were sunflowers blooming at the edge of the orchard, swaying proudly in the wind. Rachel stood in overalls, a straw hat on her head, dirt smudged on her cheeks. She watched as a group of children picked tomatoes and chased each other between the rows. One little girl ran up to her. "Miss Rachel, do you live here?" Rachel smiled. "I do now." The girl grinned. "I like it here. It feels like the ground is happy." Rachel knelt down. "I think it is." Inside the house, the walls had been repainted. The old fireplace, once cracked and hiding secrets, now had fresh stone around it. Rachel placed the signed will, her father's journal, and the broken recorder in a glass case on a shelf, not to remember the pain, but to honor the truth. Eli visited often. Sometimes he stayed late. Sometimes he didn't leave at all. One evening, as the stars lit up the sky, they sat together under the pear tree where Rachel had buried the plaque. "You know," Eli said, brushing a leaf from her hair, "I think your father knew what he was doing." Rachel leaned against his shoulder. "He didn't know how to love out loud. But he loved me in his own quiet way." Eli nodded. "And you gave him peace in the end. That matters." They sat in silence. Rachel looked around her, at the garden, the trees, the barn glowing under the moonlight. This was no longer a house full of ghosts. It was a home full of hope. 1 year later, a small wooden sign stood at the front gate, carved by hand. "The Donovan Garden, where roots grow and truth lives." Visitors came often now. School kids, local families, travelers passing through. People didn't just come to see the farm. They came to hear the story. A woman who found a will in her walls. A daughter who uncovered secrets meant to stay buried. A farm saved not by blood, but by heart. Rachel stood on the porch one evening, wind brushing her face. The fields stretched far and golden. The trees whispered in the breeze. She closed her eyes. In her heart, she could hear her father's voice again. Only she will look with a heart open wide enough to see it. She smiled. She had looked. She had fought. And now, she had finally come home. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt forgotten, silenced, or betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, you're not alone. Sometimes, the truth lives where no one dares to look. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new story that might just speak to your soul. And in the comments, tell me, what would you do if your family tried to erase you from your own story?